We all want to feel peace in our lives. Peace in our choices, our beliefs, our relationships, and our environment. I've learned that this desired contentment is often found through holding on to less. When we pare down what we own, what we consume, and what we value, we're left with what's intentional, a personalized curation of what is important and true and useful to us. I'm Shannon Leyko, and you're listening to Paring Down, a podcast aimed at helping you declutter not only your home, but any area of your life that's overwhelming. Here, we're having interesting and honest conversations about the physical and mental clutter that drowns out what truly matters to each of us. And together, we'll learn how to pare it all down, not for the sake of perfection or becoming rigid, rather so we can move through life with less overwhelm and more joy, wisdom, and peace. Hey everyone, welcome back to Paring Down. I am Shannon Leyko to be exact, and thank you for being here. If you remember from 2 weeks ago, I shared with you that I am currently on a road trip from the panhandle of Florida all the way up through Canada over into Alaska, where then we will take a 9-hour car ferry to our final destination of Kodiak, Alaska, which is where our family is moving because my husband is in the Coast Guard and we will be stationed there for 3 years. So, we'll just be living out in the middle of nowhere, which honestly sounds great to me. I'm into it. We lived in Ketchikan, Alaska for 3 years before moving to Florida, and it was the best time of my life. I mean, I was just at full relaxation mode and like the healthiest I've ever been. I really think that looking at a mountain and water every day out of my window was exactly what my soul needed. And I'm ready to get back to that lifestyle. I'm ready to not change lanes for 3 years because there's only one main road. I'm ready for the only thing for other human beings and myself to wear are leggings with rain boots, with specifically boots that are called extra tufts. If you are Alaskan or maybe like Pacific Northwest kind of people would probably know about them. They're brown. They're not the most attractive thing, but like it's a staple in every Alaskan's wardrobe. And everyone wears them from like, moms like me to literal actual fishermen. It's just what you do. So, I'm just ready for that laid back, who cares kind of a lifestyle, I'm also a hermit by nature. Like I really thrived during the pandemic, not having to see anyone. I was like, was this made for me? I mean, not to like make light of the pandemic, obviously, but the part about not seeing other humans really didn't affect me much. And we were living in Ketchikan at the time. It was great. It was just my family and me and the bald eagles and the orcas in my backyard. That's pretty much the extent of interaction I want. I mean, not entirely. Didn't we just do an episode about how it's important to have friends and to be around other humans for our well-being and happiness? So, that matters. But I guess what I'm saying is that I am excited to move to Alaska. But currently, as you are listening to this, we're not there yet. Still, it's 3 weeks on the road in our camper van. Her name's the Kathy Ann, after my mom, who always said that in retirement, she wanted to get like a van or RV and just travel the country. And she didn't live to see her retirement. So in her honor, we have this camper van that has 2 like bunk beds in the back. They're about queen size bunk beds, and then a bench seat where the kids' car seats are all just sardined in there. And, with the 2 dogs, 3 kids, 3 fish, Aaron and me, and our essentials to get by for 3 weeks on the road, as well as a couple weeks in Alaska before all of our stuff arrives. It's going to be a memorable time. If you are not following along on my Instagram, where theoretically I will be sharing some of our trip. I mean, I'm recording this before we leave. So, who's to say what future me has in store for all of you. But I think I'm going to be sharing kind of a bit of our trip along the way. Be sure you're following there at paring_down. Remember, there's no I in pair. And also sign up for the Less Express. That's my weekly newsletter. It is short. It is sweet. It is not annoying. I mean, hopefully. I'm sure no one thinks that their newsletter is annoying, but like, I think I'm self-aware. Pretty sure it's not annoying. It's like very structured and short. I don't expect you to read an essay about my life every single week, Less is an acronym, so it's LESS. Listen, so you'll know it's on the podcast every week. Excerpt is a quote of some sort that helps you stay motivated to live a life with less or just with more intention. S is share. So that's where I share a little something with you guys from me to you. So during these weeks, I think it will be about where we are in the world on our road trip. And the second S is simplify. And I give you a little decluttering challenge every single week, just like one small category to focus on for the week. So if you want to follow along with our 3-week journey, those are 2 good places to be, on my Instagram stories and with the Less Express. Another fun fact is this is my last week of being 36. So by the time you hear next week's episode, I will be 37 years old. So listen, I am not ashamed to talk about age. I've never really understood why we're ashamed to talk about age, especially women. Like, why are we trying to hide this? Why are we trying to pretend that we're 22? Like, I don't want to be 22 again. That was such a confusing time in life. Also, I have no desire to attract a 25-year-old boy. I want to attract my husband. He's 41. So, 37 is like pretty good. I'm also really grateful for all the years that God has given me on this earth. I have so many wonderful memories. And of course, there's been pain, but there's been so much growth and so many just beautiful things, right? Like, I have my kids because I've aged. I am hopefully a better person because I've aged. I am so lucky that I get to continue making memories with age. So we're celebrating out here this week, y'all. Turning 37. What a gift that is. But today you didn't tune in to sing me happy birthday, though if you want to yourself quietly wherever you're listening, that would be weird, but also do your thing. Thanks for the love. No, we're going to be talking about the key to staying motivated on any topic, but obviously this is a decluttering podcast, so we'll be talking about how to stay motivated on your decluttering journey. However, the big key element that I will be talking about today can really be applied to anything that you want to stay motivated to do, whether it's workout, whether it's spending more time with your family, whether it's adjusting your financial habits, getting in tune with your spiritual faith walk, whatever you want to stay motivated with. You have to know your why. And that sounds so vague. I think to many of us, it's similar to the idea of like, find your purpose. What does that mean? Or like, I think my purpose is to eat 3 square meals a day, keep my kids alive, have a roof over my head, and like generally be a nice person, right? I think most of us are like, I don't get it. Like, unless we are like actively solving the clean water crisis across the world, like so many of us just feel like, what do you mean purpose? And that's really not the topic of today. I have said before, I think on this podcast, I say that sentence every podcast. I think I've said this before on the podcast, but like, do you blame me? How am I supposed to know? We're on episode, what is this? I don't know. Let me look at my little schedule here. This is episode 89. Okay. Each episode is like, I don't know, 35 minutes to an hour. So let's see, 45 minutes ish. So I'm probably on, hour 70 something of talking to you guys for the last almost 2 years. I'm just not going to remember everything I said. If you do, that's so cool. But yeah, you'll have to forgive me for always being like, I don't know if I've said this before. Sorry. Man, now I don't even know what I was going to say. Oh, the definition of purpose that I like. It's by Joshua Becker, who's like a big deal in the minimalist world. He's written many books. My absolute favorite is Things That Matter. He also wrote The Minimalist Home. He has a course. Maybe no, he stopped doing his course, but he has a magazine. I don't know. Anyways, you can look up Joshua Becker. He's great. And his definition of purpose has always stuck with me. It's the intersection of our skill set, our passions, and meeting the needs of another. I just think that makes a lot of sense. So you can be like super passionate about painting pictures of dogs, right? And that's something you're passionate about. But if you're not good at it, like you're probably not going to be able to meet the need of another person, because no one's going to want like a stick figure bad drawing of their dog to hang on their wall, right? So you also have to have a skill. It needs to meet your skill. So let's say you're a really good artist and you're passionate about drawing dogs, but if you just do that and fill your own home up, like that's not really fulfilling a purpose. However, if you then combine it with meeting the needs of someone else, so let's say you start an Etsy shop for people who want to celebrate their dogs, because that brings them joy. That's a meeting the need of another person, their emotional need to celebrate their sweet little fluffy noodles, Or maybe there's people who have lost their dog and they want to memorialize their dog with a beautiful photo or a beautiful picture that you painted. Painting, not photo. Okay, you're meeting the needs of another person. So that can be your purpose, is painting beautiful pictures of dogs because you're good at it and passionate about it and you're meeting the needs of another person. Okay, it was a really obscure example, but it probably was inspired by the fact that my dogs are right in front of me. And I have used like Etsy shops before to give friends gifts when their dogs have passed away. Like one friend, I got her a wine glass with this beautiful like hand painted picture of her dog on it that passed. And then another friend, I got a sweatshirt made with like a screen printed cartoon version photo of her dog on the front. So, that makes sense to me. But whatever your purpose is, it's your skill set, passion, and meeting the needs of another person. So you can start developing what you think that passion is. Like for me, I really do find a purpose in helping other people live more intentional lives through owning less. So it's a passion of mine. Speaking and writing is a skill set of mine. And hopefully I am meeting the needs of you guys who are listening or looking at my Instagram or one day reading my book. Which, by the way, I'm so close as of recording this to finishing my book proposal. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited to tell you about it. I've written the entire introduction. Well, the book proposal, you probably don't care about this, but I'm going to tell you anyway. So there's like a, marketing section, and you have to write not only kind of how you're going to market the book and why it's a marketable book, but also your book hook, which is like a short explanation of your book, the overview, chapter summaries, all of that. So all of that is done. And then you have a big writing sample at the end. So for me, I'm writing the entire introduction of my book and then half of chapter 1 before I turn it into the lit agents to consider. And then if I get signed with a lit agent, then they pitch it to the publishing houses. So, the journey has just begun, but I have finished all of it through the full intro, and I'm starting chapter 1 today. I think it'll take me about a week to write like half of chapter 1 because I do everything in very little steps, like 500 to 750 words a day. Because if I try and do it all at once, then I get overwhelmed and I stop and I don't do it the next day and then it never happens. So, baby steps. So all of that to be said is I can't wait for this book to get in your hands. I wrote the intro in the last week, and it's probably my favorite thing I've ever written in my life. Even my husband, I sent it to him last night, and he doesn't like to read. In fact, in our wedding vows, he quoted Nick Miller from New Girl and said, "One of the things I love about you is like how good you are with words and your talent when it comes to writing. Meanwhile, I don't even know how to read. I've just memorized a lot of words," which is what Nick Miller says if you're a New Girl fan. So anyway, my husband, needless to say, doesn't read. And he read it yesterday and was like, I forgot I was reading. Like it was that entertaining. So that makes me feel really good about it. So my fingers and toes are crossed that I'll be able to get a lit agent and get this book into your hands in, T-minus 2 years, because this process takes 1,000 years or 2. But anyways, that's my skill: communication, speaking, writing. And I've paired it with something I'm passionate about and hopefully meeting the needs of others. So you can develop your purpose that way. But the other vague kind of phrase we say often, besides find your purpose, is know your why. And that's the one we're actually talking about today. You have to know why you're doing something beyond just the kind of superficial reasoning that maybe you just know it's the right thing to do, or you kind of think it'll make your house feel better, or what the experts say. And so you're like, yeah, that would be a good thing to do. Well, if we all just easily did all the things we were supposed to do, we would all be eating vegetables all the time. We'd be running 3 miles a morning and lifting weights. We'd be, perfectly around the dinner table every single night, no exceptions, right? Like there's so many things that we're like, we know this is the right thing to do, but we don't because it's hard to stay motivated. And that's the deeper why that comes into play. We need to know that why in order to keep going. So today, I'm going to actually walk you through my Know Your Why worksheet. If you have done this worksheet before, I think this will be a really fun review, and obviously I will be able to pepper in my own responses and thoughts to the reflection questions that hopefully can help you, maybe help you get back aligned if you've kind of gotten off track or whatever. If you have not ever done my free Know Your Why worksheet, that will be available in the show notes, and basically you can write down kind of your answers to it as I walk you through it today. But why is your why so important? Well, specifically when it comes to decluttering. Clutter is this vicious cycle, right? We feel really defeated. Sometimes it feels like we're never going to get it all out. New things keep rolling in. Perhaps we've started some, really ambitious project. And so we've pulled everything out, and then all of a sudden we lose motivation. And now we're sitting in this pile of junk, and it's worse than when we began. And so we've lost our motivation mid-project. And so it can feel really hard to keep going because it's just you feel like there's no end in sight. So when we're tempted to give up, the only thing that will keep us going is if we're clear on why we are doing this. We need to know why we want to get the stuff out and create new habits regarding what we allow in, beyond just the fact that our house would maybe look a little nicer, or we know we'd feel less stressed. Those are very good whys, and maybe they'll come up as part of your overarching why that you're going to discover today. But we really want to dig even deeper. So I talk about 3 ways of defining your why, of identifying your why. That is knowing what your core values are so that they can be reflected inside your home, having a clear vision for your home, and knowing exactly what dreams you have for your life once your home no longer hijacks your time and your energy. So core values, vision, and dreams. What are core values exactly? So core values are the principles by which you weigh your decisions and form your priorities in life. Think about the value of, the dollar, right? We determine what something is worth by how many dollars we throw at it. So in our lives, we determine what something is worth, how important it is, by our value metric, which is not the dollar bill, but our core values. What is valuable to us as an individual human? And then we can look at something and say, is it worth it? Right? And so we're weighing our decisions based on these core values. They are our metric, like a dollar bill. So how do we figure out what exactly our core values are? Because I think for so many of us, we're okay, great. What's important to me? Well, my family and being a good person. It's vague, right? So I like to break our core values down into morals, experiences, and codes of conduct. What are morals? Morals are what we believe to be right and wrong from an ethical standpoint. So maybe one of your morals is that you don't believe in stealing, lying, cheating, right? Those are morals. It could be that you believe that the right thing to do is to help those who are in need, that you have integrity, that you're not a hypocrite, right? Those are types of things that would be morals. How do you determine what do we believe is right and wrong from an ethical standpoint? So if you're trying to figure out what your morals are, you need to determine how you figure out what is right and wrong. What do you hold your standard to? So for me personally, as you guys know, I'm a Christian, so I hold my standard of right and wrong to what the Bible says, for the most part. I'm actually reading a lot about canonization. It's not that I don't believe in the Bible. That's not what I'm saying. But I do think that it's not as black and white as a lot of modern Christians like to say it is, or that they cherry pick scriptures, right? And you have to look at the big picture of what the Bible says, specifically what Jesus says. So I do think you have to be careful when it comes to interpretations. Just want to make that clear. But for me, that's kind of how I determine my morals. Now, if you're not a religious person, that's fine. You can obviously still have morals. So a question you might be able to ask yourself is, how can emotions like guilt or empathy point me toward what my morals are? What is your little conscience telling you? You got to get in tune with that. So if you feel guilty about doing something, or you feel really empathetic toward another person, figure out where that's coming from, because that's a good sign that you're either in tune or out of sync with what you believe to be right and wrong morally. If you cut somebody off in the road and you feel oh, that was kind of a douchey move, I shouldn't have done that, then maybe one of your morals is treating other people the way you want to be treated, or is to be more patient, or is to be more selfless, right? You're just, that's morally important to you. You think that's the right thing to do. Or if we take it from the empathetic standpoint, if you see, I don't know, a child that is not being played with at the playground and they look lonely and by themselves and your heart goes out to them, then one of your morals might be to be like an inclusive kind of a person. You believe it's not right to leave other people out, to exclude other human beings. So ask yourself, how do I determine if something is right or wrong, ethically speaking? And how can emotions like guilt or empathy point me toward that answer? Another great reflection question here is, what is an example of when I'm willing to go against the grain to stand up for something I believe? Because that tells you that you have a strong moral tie to what is right and wrong, if you're willing to go against whatever you think is wrong. This does not have to be some huge worldview. This can be a personal parenting choice. It can be a decision in the workplace. For me, I feel very strongly about not exploiting other human beings in the world just because you don't know them. Like, I will stand up for the fact that I think Shein and Temu and a lot of these different companies are wrong, and I don't think you should buy from them. And I'm not here to make anyone feel terrible about themselves, right? So I have to walk that fine line of not letting it get to a point of like judgment and condemnation. But I feel strongly enough to go against the grain and say it's not okay. Like, we are supporting human trafficking by supporting those companies. We are being selfish in saying that we want the next cutest trend that's going to fall apart anyway at the expense of the life of someone else. The people whose lives are being exploited in order to make those kinds of clothing, right? So my morals right there, they tell me what's right and wrong. And for me, exploiting another person for my benefit is wrong. And so I'm willing to stand against that. So it's a good way to determine your morals about something, is like, what gets you fired up? What are you willing to go against the grain for? Another question is, what allows me to feel strongly about this despite opposition? So why do I feel so strongly about that? Like, where does that come from? Because we're not all passionate about everything. So for me, I think the reason I get fired up about not exploiting workers overseas is because I learned from a very young age that the American westernized culture and lifestyle is incredibly narrow-minded. I was fortunate to spend a fair amount of time in Chennai, India when I was 16 and again when I was 18. And through those experiences, along with a couple of other things, like, I know that there are other people out in the world who experience a very different life than I do. And I'm not able to just tell myself to forget about it. Right? Like, I just can't be like, oh, not my problem. Like, I've met these people. Not every single one of them, right? But like, I've met people like them. I know where they live. I know what their lives are like. I know how brilliant they are. I know how funny they are. I know how hardworking they are. I know how much they love their children. I know how much they love to laugh and smile and all of the things that make us all human. If I don't want my daughter, my beautiful 5-year-old strawberry blonde little angel baby of a daughter, to be exploited by someone else, then what am I doing to these moms overseas, to these women who were once my daughter, who they and their moms have no option but to be treated poorly just to get by and survive in order for me to have an $8 t-shirt? Like, no. So what allows me to feel strongly about this is that exposure to people who are different from me from a young age. And then there's more to unpack there about my morals, about how strongly I feel about the treatment of other people, of the exposure to people who are different from us, of anti-racism, of never thinking we are above someone else, never thinking that the stuff that we own makes us better, right? Like, this all goes hand in hand. So that's the first part of your core values, are your morals. Hey guys, it's time for your ad break. Each week I like to say a huge thank you for your graciousness that these are part of the podcast. Here we go. The next are your experiences. So we all have core values that are tied to what we want to do in life. A lot of people say it's one of my core values is to travel. One of my core values is to spend time with my friends. One of my core values is to get outside and enjoy nature, right? These are experiential core values. A great way to figure out what your experiential core values are is to imagine your perfect day. Ask yourself, where am I? Who is with me? How do I feel? Why does that location and those people make me feel those things? And how can I recreate this type of experience in my daily life? How can I set up my home to support these types of experiences? And we're going to get more into how our morals, experiences, and code of conduct affect our decluttering and why that will help us stay motivated. So stay with me here, but figure out what your core values are that relate to experiences. For me, it's absolutely my friendships. That's huge. Of course, spending time with my family. That's an experiential core value. Getting outside, looking at nature, looking up. I'm a big believer in looking at the clouds and finding shapes in the clouds. I think that is like one of the best things you can ever do for yourself. It sounds so simple, but even yesterday, I was driving home with the kids and they were fighting like they always do on the way home from school. And you know how I got them to stop? I said, "Oh my gosh, you guys, look at that cloud. It looks just like a horse that's galloping. Do you see how the leg is like kind of bent in the front, like it looks like it's running?" And then they all stopped and looked and tried to see the cloud. And then my son said, "Oh my gosh, I see a hammerhead shark over there," right? Like it's just powerful when we just look at the world around us. It's good for us on many levels, okay? So getting outside is one of my core values, hence why I am currently camping somewhere in Canada or Alaska right now when you were listening to this. Okay, so that's experiences. We did morals, experiences, and now we're on to codes of conduct as it reflects your morals. So codes of conduct are what you do. So the morals are kind of like what's right and wrong. Like, I don't think you should lie. I think you should be inclusive, right? And that's part of what you do. But there's actual like specific codes of conduct. Like you can say, I want to be kind, but what does that look like? I'm not going to raise my voice. I'm going to be on time. I'm going to give the benefit of the doubt, right? What do you do? What are your codes of conduct for how you behave that support those morals? One of the things you can do to figure out what your codes of conduct might need to be is to ask yourself, who is someone I aspire to be like, dead or alive, and why? Because we can see the actions of other people really easily. So in my life, someone I aspire to be like is my old mentor, Annie. I haven't talked to her in far too long, but in my 20s, she really helped me become more aligned in my life after losing my mom. She was, I guess at the time, probably in her 50s. And I was, like I said, 25 or so. And I just want to be like her. I remember she was talking about her kids who had just gone off to college. And she was like, you know what? I did all I could to be a good mom, but it's in God's hands now. So she was just like, I'm not going to harp on them if they're making a bad choice or if they're doing something I don't approve of. I'm just going to love on them. I'm going to love on them because they know what I believe. They know what I've taught them. And now it's up to them to figure out how to apply it or what they want to take or what they're ready to take. And they're God's children, not mine, right? Like she just had this sense of peace about her. She never went on these like big crazy rants. I don't know if you could tell, but I'm kind of a ranty person, right? Like her code of conduct was like gentleness and kindness, but also speaking the truth. Like she never just told me what I wanted to hear. She believed in making other people laugh. That's a code of conduct of mine, y'all, is to be funny, because I just think that laughter is medicine. I mean, gosh, that's cheesy, but isn't it true? And man, Annie's the funniest woman I've ever met in my entire life. I remember one time I was like, hey, I don't think I can come over today. Like, I really need to do laundry. It's my only day. And she's like, bring your laundry over here to my house and do it while we catch up. And her teenage son was there. And she's like, he's going to do your laundry. And I was like, Annie, he can't do my laundry. Like my underwear's in there. You know what I mean? And she has this great Southern accent. She was like, oh, honey, he needs to learn to do laundry for another woman someday, and he'll be seeing those delicates one way or another, or something like that. And it was the funniest thing I've ever heard in my entire life. And so anyways, now I always think of them as delicates. And, her son did my laundry. It was great. But anyways, she's just someone who I think of. And when I think about how she behaves and shows up in the world, I want to be like her. And that helps me identify, okay, why do I like her? And what are her codes of conduct? And how do I want to apply those into my life? And you can also consider what codes of conduct line up with your morals or maybe just more specific virtues. So we can all agree on a lot of virtuous traits, right? Like being accepting, assertive. Actually, I'm going to read all of the ones that I've written out on this Know Your Why worksheet that I then encourage you to circle 3 so that you just can have some direction, like some narrowed down direction in figuring out what your codes of conduct look like as they might align to these virtues. So here are some virtues: accepting, assertive, authentic, brave, caring, committed, compassionate, confident, content, cooperative, courageous, creative, determined, dignified, encouraging, enthusiastic, fair, faithful, flexible, forgiving, friendly, generous, gentle, grateful, harmonious, honest, hopeful, humble, integrity. I couldn't think of like integral. Nope, that's not a word. Someone of integrity. Okay. Kind, knowledgeable, loyal, optimistic, passionate, patient, peaceful, perseverant, prudent, resilient, service-oriented, sincere, wonder-driven, which basically means like, do you believe in having a sense of awe and wonder? Or maybe curiosity would be a better word there. I don't know. The me who wrote this thought wonder was a good word to write there. So think about which of those really stands out to you. So which 3 virtues do you want to define your legacy? Let's say you choose creative. Okay, that's a virtue. So how does someone who is creative conduct themselves in the world? Well, they respond to people with open-mindedness, because creativity means you have to see things from other people's perspective. You have to be self-motivated. You can't create anything if you don't get up and create something. And nobody's going to force you to do that. So you have to be a little bit self-motivated, right? You figure out what are these codes of conduct that are associated with the virtues I want to define my legacy. All right, so those are your core values, your morals, experiences, and codes of conduct. This is really getting to the why in your home and keeping you motivated to do anything. But in terms of your home, what is right and wrong, ethically speaking? I mean, I touched on mine, right, with overconsumption. I don't want to buy more, not only because it's going to clutter at my house, but my why is that I believe it's wrong to exploit other people or to exploit the planet, right? So you figure out what your morals are and how it relates to your home. Same with your experiences. Do you want to have all this stuff to always have to manage if you want to travel, if your core value is to travel? And it makes it harder for you to do that because you can't afford to travel because you're buying a bunch of crap, or you live in a house that's too big and you filled it with a bunch of stuff, so you can't afford to do what actually matters to you in life. You never want to see your friends because you don't want to invite people over because you don't want to clean the house. How is your home supporting or not your, experiential core values or codes of conduct? I'm not going to yell. I'm going to be on time. I already brought up those ones, but they're front of mind. Does your home support that? Being self-motivated, right? Like if you have a bunch of shoes by the door that you're going to trip over, you're going to get more frustrated and you might yell at your kids about it. If you can't find your keys, you're not going to get somewhere on time. If your house is cluttered, it makes it harder for you to maintain those codes of conduct. So that's the kind of the bridge I want you to make between these core values and staying motivated to declutter your home. You ask yourself, does this item bring me closer to my core values or further from my core values as you're decluttering your house? Okay, so the next part of knowing your why is creating a vision. For decluttering, this is definitely more straightforward. This is where you can get inspired by the idea of your house being less stressful and like looking nice. There's nothing wrong with being motivated by that. And by creating a very specific vision, you'll know exactly where your decluttering journey is taking you and be more determined to get there. If you don't have a vision in your mind of what your house will look like when it's decluttered, you're not going to keep going. You're just going to sit there in a pile of mess and be like, why did I start doing this? But when you have your eyes on the prize and you're like, I know exactly what this house is going to look like and I can't wait, that makes it so much easier to keep going. So create a vision. Like, what is your favorite thing to do inside your house? Is it to read? Is it to, build a fort with your kids? Is it to have wine dates with your husband on the couch? I don't know, whatever it is. And imagine doing that thing in a clean and uncluttered home, in a home that supports that activity, where you're not distracted by all the stuff that makes it hard to do that. You can't really feel fully relaxed and into your book because there's just like stuff everywhere telling you have something to do, right? So imagine your favorite thing to do in your home, and then imagine doing that in a less cluttered, less stressful home. And ask yourself, how will having less clutter allow me to enjoy my favorite activity even more? Another way to get your vision in order is to think, how would I describe my current home in 3 words? And how do I want my future home to feel in 3 words? So maybe for your current home, you choose the words overwhelming, chaotic, and uninspired. And I encourage you to choose like 3 kind of negative words. I know that sounds counterintuitive. Like, shouldn't we be focusing on the positive? Yes, but if you're trying to change your home, you need to focus on the things you want to change, So 3 words that you would describe your current home that you would like them not to be there. You don't want those words. And then how do you want your home to feel in 3 words? So for me, I always think I want my home to feel welcoming. I want it to feel bright, and I want it to feel manageable. I want people to walk in, it's welcoming, they know who lives here, there's personalized things on the wall, not, some tchotchke that looked pretty at Home Goods. You know what I mean? Like, I want people to walk in and feel like, oh, this is where the Leykos live. And it's welcoming. They don't feel like they have to move 80 different cushions on our couch in order to sit down, and that if they break something, they're going to get in trouble, right? Like, I want it to feel casual and hospitable and, just normal. I don't know, normal to me, I guess. I want it to feel bright. To me, bright means that it's calm and open and airy and not dingy. And of course, manageable. I want to be in a house that feels like I'm not running a marathon every day trying to keep up with it. Like, I just want it to kind of flow like a well-oiled machine. When you really think about those 3 words that are important to you, it gives you a vision for what you're doing and why you're doing it, and that will keep you motivated in the process. You can also think of very specific things that matter to you, right? Like, I want to lose items less often. I want it to not feel like a chore when I'm picking out an outfit. I don't want to trip over things anymore. I want the kids to have room to play in their playroom instead of just like storing toys in there. I don't want to have to move a bunch of stuff when I have to wipe down surfaces. I don't want to feel stressful when there's last minute guests. I want to be able to put everything away really easily, right? Like, think about those more specific decluttering benefits, and that's part of your vision. And the last part, to stay motivated and knowing your why, besides knowing your core values and having a vision, is to embrace some dreams. If you dream up a life you love, like, really think about it. It's kind of similar to a vision, but rather than like the actual visual, what will my home look like? We're talking about big picture, what will my life look like? Because when you have less to manage at home, you will have a newly available time that can be spent doing the things that bring you joy, leaning into your purpose that we talked about at the beginning, that you might not have had the bandwidth to do when you're a stuff manager. So if you're like, I don't know what I dream about for my future, like, I don't have some big dream, well, think about these reflection questions. If you, God willing, get to live to 90 years old, what will you wish you had done or learned? Or what's a lofty goal you had when you were younger? Maybe what is a skill that you always think, oh, that would be so cool to be able to do? And maybe think about, what's one way I want to make the world a better place? And where can I start? What's the very first thing I can do to make that happen? We have to get excited for our futures, you guys. Like, I really believe that that's part of living a decluttered life. One of the reasons I am still so motivated to keep my home super decluttered is because I don't want to have to think about that instead of writing my book proposal, or making these podcast episodes for you, or taking my kids to the beach in Alaska where we get to beachcomb for starfish and crabs. Like, I dream of a future where more people on this planet care less about all the stuff they own and care more about the people around them. That they have the energy to show up in their communities and be kind and generous, that they slow down, stop being so rude to everyone around them, because it's just creating a toxic culture, right? Like, I have a dream. I am not Martin Luther King Jr., but I have this dream that we can actually make the world a better place by stopping all the focus on the stuff, by like saying no to the overconsumption and saying, no, I'm not going to let this define my confidence, my finances, my time. Like, I'm not going to do it. And I, as you can tell, I feel so passionate about this. That's my dream for making the world a better place. And so first of all, obviously I want to get rid of the stuff because that directly affects my dreams personally. But like, I don't want it to get in the way of pursuing the things that I can do to have a voice toward making the world a better place. And for me, that's my podcast and the book, or even Instagram content. So if you liked some of these reflection questions, but of course you can't just like come up with some profound answers as you're driving your car or listening to this while you do dishes, or however you listen to your podcasts, go back and get this free. It's a free worksheet, free Know Your Why worksheet. There's a little, you can print it out, and there's areas to write down your answers to the prompts, so that you can dig deeper into your decluttering journey and really reveal your bigger why, so that you stay determined to keep going when things feel tough. You're going to be like, of course I'm going to keep going because this matters to me when it comes to my core values. Of course, I'm going to keep going because I know exactly in my head how I want this house to look and feel. Of course, I'm going to keep going because I have these big dreams and I need time to do them. I'm excited for all of you. Obviously, you're taking a great step in the right direction just by being here and listening to this podcast. So I hope that you found it inspirational today. And if my calendar doesn't change on me, then next week you get to hear from Dr. Brittany Pope. She is a therapist who I happen to know personally, and we're going to be talking how clutter affects our mental health. So I will see you next week. You just listened to an episode of Paring Down with me, Shannon Leyko. If you enjoyed the show, it would mean the world if you can leave a review wherever you listen and share this episode with a friend. Those reviews really are what keeps a podcast on its feet for the long haul, and I will read every single one with a huge smile on my face. So thank you ahead of time. If you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to hit subscribe. Also, be sure to follow along on Instagram at paring_down, where I offer lots of tips and inspiration for paring down, along with what's new here on the podcast. Till next time.